My warm greetings to Chairperson, Professor, and all other attendees of this session. Firstly, I would like to thank organizing team, especially Bala sir, for giving me such a prestigious platform to present my views. The title of my paper is, as ma'am said, Finding Meaning in Life Through Philosophical Counseling. So in this paper, I have tried to understand the meaning of life from three perspectives majorly, and on the basis of the same, I have divided my paper in three sections. First is finding through fear, or you can say fear of death. Does life refer to mere physical existence of a being residing in this world? What makes life worth living? Is there any continuity in the gathering of historical facts that makes one understand life? Or is there something more to be concerned that requires one's own experience? Such kind of questions seems to be quite thought-provoking amidst people from all walks of life. Especially in the COVID times where we are living in the fearful and stressed times where we are dealing with mental health problems related to issues like in relationship, families, professional lives. Even before this pandemic hits our life choices and decisions that we make every day, death is the one thing that has remained certain. It does not matter whether a person is poor or rich, but the fact remains changed that we all have to die one day. It is a misconception of an individual to perceive his, her body, people or situation around them as permanent. None of what we are experiencing today, like global disaster, fear of death, dissatisfaction with lives, restlessness, is new. It is true that we have a little control over economic crisis, war, pandemic, but one's perspective to deal with such kind of situation is what makes a person's thought process unique. Creating happiness and calmness in human mind has been challenging with the evolution of time. However, with the timeless knowledge of Upanishads and its philosophical relevance in counseling guides us to deal with obstacles to address the basic human desire for fulfillment and to lead a life of action, altruism, and balance. Due to the globalization, an individual has become more materialistic instead of fostering a spiritual belief. The primary concern of most of the individual has been shifted to the external world rather than reflecting internally or within themselves. Today, humans are more bothered about sensual pleasure and bodily desire. They are not frightened of death as such, but what makes them anxious is a cessation of their or other continued presence. This desire comes out of selfishness, attachment for others, and materialistic life. According to J. Krishnamurti, fear can exist only in relation to something, not in isolation. This fear is interlinked with the renouncing of name, property, wealth, loved ones. On the other hand, isolation is when we feel separated from everything that exists in this world. In my view, isolation is rather a negative term rather than positive, as a person started feeling unrelated towards the surrounding feelings, surrounding people, objects, and other things. And this can lead towards the absurd living, where a person's mind is so much impacted that it can lead to suicidal thoughts. When Krishnamurti said isolation is of the mind, but not of death, in my opinion, he tries to associate death in a unifying principle. When a body dies, it merges into a 5 elements: air, water, fire, space, ether, and becomes united with whole, unlike a subjective mind which thinks, acts differently, and divide each other. However, instead of comprehending the idea of unified whole and death, human mind tried to pacify themselves with the belief of reincarnation or resurrection. Ultimately, what has happened is rather on focusing on life as such, we only try to see continuity, permanence of ourselves and other things in this world. Our fulfillment of happiness is always dependent on something or other. There are very few people who actually try to come out of this darkness or ignorance and distinguish between the good and pleasant. So the good and the pleasant is the Shreyas and Prayas, which are the concept in the Kathopanishad. So things that give us happiness or pleasure remains with us for a short span of time. Even if we reflect on the past, the things in our life has been quite changed. The things that were affecting us yesterday are not necessarily withholding us today to enjoy at the present. Even Swami Abhedanand, in his writing on mystery of death, asserts that it is a fact that we cannot enjoy one pleasure throughout eternity. And even if we could, we would not be happy because there would be no occasion for comparison that would make us feel monotonous. So, stating an stance that a person likes to go to a mall uh, daily, but after some time he might feel that this activity seems boring to him because it does not keep him passionate to go into one place and again until and unless then it makes something that lighten up his mind. So moreover, even if we presume that a particular event will give us our ultimate happiness, we are wrong to assert it due to the following reason. Firstly, we lose the power of comparison between the good and the pleasant. Secondly, in this earthly life, duration of suffering is greater than happiness because suffering includes in itself the pleasurable things like bodily attachment, wealth, sexual pleasure, etc., which limits the scope of mindful happiness and peace. The problem is what we think is good and permanent. In reality, it is pleasurable, which is impermanent. According to Krishnamurti, we die in every single moment, but the misery is we are not aware of it due to lack of understanding. Only a few people, after proper analyzing and reacting to their own call of conscience, which challenge their preconceived notion, could discriminate between the two and understand the nature of life and death. The second perspective that I have taken here is existentialist on life while unlocking human potentiality. It is assumed that young and adults have comparatively more fear of death than people who had already lived a long life. The latter one has a different approach towards death, which can be noticed through a sudden change in his or her behavior. As he knows, he is a step closer towards death. However, the former has much to do in his life, and death seems more uncertain and results in distress due to other family members. To this, Seneca, the Roman Stoic philosopher, known for his work in Stoicism and ethics, says, life is never long enough if it is lived without knowing the purpose of life. Even old age people can think they have not lived long enough, and a young person can feel that he has fulfilled his purpose of living. Though the suffering that one family goes through in both the cases cannot went off easily. It might take years for a family to recover from this agony. Suppose if a person knows death is approaching, no matter what age one belongs, would one act or behave in the same manner? Whether one still tries to complete his projects, or do we see any change in his priority? Obviously, one wishes to spend his time wisely. So a few years back in India, an issue of euthanasia was highlighted in media, which reflected the ongoing debate between passive and active euthanasia. In that episode, what I noticed that there was a couple who was aged 81 and 89 years, and they wrote a letter to a president seeking permission for euthanasia. Although physically they seem fine according to their age, so it was difficult to figure out the reason for this step, which is more of a suicide case than euthanasia. When asked by the experts, they simply said that they have lived their life completely and do not want to be dependent on anyone. Moreover, when discussion keep moving further, they said that their life has become purposeless and they have no relatives or neighbors to visit them. In a meanwhile, they become ecstatic to while talking to experts and felt that their decision was wrong. We notice here how the rhetoric, art, or power of conscience could really help people to have a positive approach towards life if it is carried with right intention and actions. Human being amidst its own challenging call, challenging call of conscience, which is constantly forthcoming and which demands a heartfelt response, much like a friend in need. Human life is vulnerable in itself, in a sense that one has to deal with daily struggles and misery. Although some people consider themselves fortunate enough if they manage to escape physical sufferings, unlike others who suffer physically as well as mentally. In the latter, we see the societal thoughts develop very fast. There is no doubt that vulnerability is there, as Torme, a political philosopher, also mentions in A Fragile Life. But he also brings a new view on invulnerability. So, what is vulnerability is that you are involved in the project, some project or thing, but you are not involved in such a way that it leads to some suffering. He asserts further that suffering might trigger anxiety, which surely affect our involvement with projects. But if a person self-reflects within themselves by giving close attention to conscience, then a being or potentiality in human, as Heidegger claimed, can manifest itself. It is largely manifested through the struggle between various aspects of our conscience. One of the aspects where the hidden potentiality of human could be unfolded is by projecting an uncertain but inevitable death in the future. This uncertainty develops anxiousness in human, which is significant to reach closer to Earth's or reality of Dasein. Heidegger uses the expression Dasein to refer to the experience of a being that is peculiar to human being. Anxiety in the face of death must not be so this anxiety will lead to an appropriate direction towards an entity of anger could possibly be understood in terms of others as it requires a reflexive action. In spite of this, existentialist urges us to recognize the freedom of choice, not necessarily by identifying oneself through others, but by breaking away this average, absurd everyday living and start focusing on consciousness itself. This absurd, average everydayness is recognized by Heidegger as an inauthentic living, where one gets attached with the temporal boundness of life. For Heidegger, a person or an individual I living in this world until not find himself guilty for his reckless action will keep on living an unauthentic mode of life, not only guilty of his own action, but also recognized as being dominated or influenced by other. Now, to observe the idea of being, Heidegger elaborated on the necessary structure of Dasein. He divided into three parts: existence, practicity,
and I request all the keep themselves muted. Dr. Meenakshi.
Oh my God.
Muted.
क्या है बता? ये है क्या?
अरे the
Okay, ma'am. So to absorb the idea of a being, Heidegger elaborated on the necessary structure of Dasein. He divided into three parts.
मुझे अच्छा लगता है.
I request the participants to keep their audio muted. Can I request the coordinator to please mute the participant? The audio can be muted so that we can have a seamless flow of the presentation. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Richa, please go ahead.
Okay. So it divided into three parts. Dasein has been structure of Dasein has been divided into three parts: existence, facticity, and fallness. And in all of them, he contends on the notion of being yourself, to actualize one's freedom of choice, regardless of social circumstances and culture. He seeks death as the own most possibility, and individual life has its own potentiality to recognize the possibility of Dasein. Although the position of Heidegger is criticized by few thinkers on considering death as an almost possibility by the famous existentialist Sartre, feminist thinker Simone de Beauvoir, and others. Somehow their reason for disagreement is more or less similar, as Sartre point out that my death can be replaced by other. For example, in war, many times a soldier had to sacrifice his life for others. Likewise, Simone de Beauvoir expresses her view by emphasizing what we are, how to express ourselves. The emotions that we endure are possible to understand because of the external perspective. Thus, it is impossible to devoid of the relation of being in others. In recognizing the meaning of life, either an individual eludes himself in an empirical world or he might embrace his consciousness. There is no other option that one follows. Now, holding on the same philosophy, I would be coming to the Indian perspective of knowing reality of life beyond suffering. So, in Western existentialist perspective, we have seen that there may be the clashes over the notion of subjective and objective world. However, Vedanta philosophy considered with empirical world equally important, but at the same time, when the same knowledge is perceived from the highest level, then it teaches us not only how to live, but also how to die, significance of suffering. So according to Vedanta philosophy, reality is that which is real in all three dimensions, past, present, and future, from an empirical point of view. So there is a very common example of snake and rope in Upanishads, where because of the dark, we couldn't see that it was a rope. So what happens? The darkness has captured our senses so well that we are not able to think or act in such a way that can aid us to get rid of the current situation. Moreover, in this Vyavaharik Jagat, we assume that the part or the role we play as an actor, doctor, farmer, etc. is only true. We are so much lost in playing our part that one forgets that he, she is beyond these roles. Whatever we are experiencing here in this earthly sphere is real for a limited period. It is not the ultimate reality. Now, how do we come across anxiety? It is only when we see a body carried through the grave or loss, at the time we realize everything, including wealth, property, family, loved ones, remain as it is. Not even a single penny is carried by the person to a grave. The body turns into ashes. Human beings are familiar only with body as an outer wall and consider this outer wall as the only life. He is unable to penetrate the inner wall of consciousness where life resides. The place where the life resides is a Atman, pure self, where from where different bodies manifest in this world. This can be well explained through an everyday experience of waking and sleeping. Most of the time we visualize or dreams of so many things in our sleep. At times when we wake up, either out of fear or in a happy state, supposing a dream to be real. Is it true or not? Yes, it is true, because the actions, emotions that we have in our dream still remind us that the subconscious mind is working, and I gets related to the ongoing fluctuation in the mind, and the body gets itself lost in dreams. I am sleeping, but my body and mind wander. Another scenario is of a person who is in deep sleep or dreamless sleep. In such a state, a person is not aware whether one is an animal, human, or something else, or dead. So what is that which remains constant? It cannot be a body. There is something different and separate from the body that unifies in I. However, as soon as a person wakes up after deep sleep, he feels Satchidanand for a moment, but soon again, a person gets absorbed with the body, which is recognized as an essential element of life and its silly problems. No one else, we only make our life complicated by valuing unnecessary things. Man only knows his half existence until he is aware of who am I? How can one reach its actuality? Osho gives a perfect example of a seed and tree. He says, tree is the wholeness of human existence. However, human being clings so firmly to the body that they misapprehend themselves as a seed without realizing the inner potential which consists of consciousness, life. When the seed germinated, it considered itself a dead. Seed fails to see its higher manifestation into the sprout, later a tree that is full of life. So according to Katha Upanishad also, the ultimate reality of human is neither the body nor any other sense organs. The real nature of human is soul. And as soon as a person realizes his or identity is nothing other than consciousness, then all false attributes are removed. I, as self, is permanent and immortal, but it is so subtle in nature that one needs to determine to know the authentic being. So this determination of a student and a teacher, a student who is like asking question from a teacher, like Nachiket asking from a Yama, what happens after a death? Even after giving so much alluring things to Nachiket, he was still formed that what he wants, what he desire from his life, that he wants to ask this question. And for this, from this, even Yama was impressed and thought to reveal the truth behind the death to him. It also shows that the Nachiket passed a test in life and trusts the teacher, which many people fail to pass in real life. In reality, if someone tries to give us these things, in no time we become corrupted. For these pleasant things, we often forget the good and lose our determination. The Upanishads and the great spiritual teachers guide us towards the idea of detachment from body, the foundation of inner peace, and the significance of soul. The contemporary spiritual writer Eckhart Tolle said, "The more you are able to honor and accept the now, the more you are free of pain of suffering. But what we do, we think of past memories, future events, and destroy the present. If any problem persists, we always start looking towards external objects instead of looking within ourselves. It could be possible through..."
We have to wind up now in another 1 minute.
Sure, ma'am. So, if the self had realized, then the relation had to be expanded to though. Due to the human limitation, ego, the individual mind is always in bondage and believe themselves to be superior. The intellect is the important factor to get us out of all the trouble, bondage, happiness, sorrow, a circle of birth and death, in short, liberation from all. When one gets rid of all these urges, desire, then he had a good control over the intellect and understand what is the ultimate goal in life. So just a 1 minute conclusion. Philosophical counseling is not a new invention. Rather, it is a traditional insights that exist long back in Indian ancient philosophy. Sometimes the problems are more in general, at their roots having to do with questions like, why am I here? What is good? How can I be happy? How can I relate myself with other? How should I live? In this empirical world, reflection is very subjective in nature. I agree here with existential philosophers in the above para that the choices of how to live is always there, and fighting back for own rights make life meaningful. Though what is morally just and unjust is another issue in itself, but an individual cannot deny the other being. Herein, I come to an agreement with Upanishad and Vedanta philosophy, which brings an idea of seeing the whole universe as life, non-dual. It becomes vital that we acknowledge the other as not an individual being, rather than an extension of our own self before acting in such a manner that could possibly do more harm than a good. If we could slow down and reflect on our thinking, we might better understand our purpose of the world and have a chance to examine our ways of thinking that we might cultivate greater clarity. Thank you so much, ma'am.